Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Mid-Atlantic Regional Community of Practice Training event, where we focus on serving the unique needs of minority veterans and underrepresented veteran communities. Today's topic was created based on the feedback from you as network users and organizations. While all veterans deserve our honor and support, there are some communities within the veteran space that can be harder to reach or have challenges with access to service. We want to have an opportunity to learn about some of those underrepresented communities so we can better serve all veterans, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual preference, and circumstance. This training is presented by Serving Together, a program of Every Mind, as part of the Regional Community of Practice efforts for the AmericaServes Mid-Atlantic region. This project was supported under a grant by the Walmart Foundation to Syracuse University. As your host today, I am Christy Kennedy, the Senior Program Manager at Serving Together, a program of Every Mind. Every Mind is a nonprofit organization out of Montgomery County, Maryland, whose mission is to strengthen communities and empower individuals to reach optimal mental wellness. We provide a variety of direct services for the entire lifespan, including 24/7 hotline, homeless outreach, school-based mental health services, and much more. We also strive to reduce the stigma surrounding mental illness and increase the importance of mental wellness for everyone. For more information, please visit our website at every-mind.org. One of our programs, Serving Together, is focused on providing resources and assistance for military veterans and their families in the National Capital Region. Among our objectives, we strive to provide education to the community to better help support our service members, veterans, and their family members and caregivers. Serving Together in Every Mind were selected as the Regional Community of Practice Champion to support the work in the Mid-Atlantic region's 3 AmericaServes coordination centers, with the goal to provide educational training opportunities and to network users from Serving Together in the National Capital Region to our Mission United folks down in Southampton Roads and up north to our PA Serves in Greater Pittsburgh region. We conduct these trainings based on feedback we have received from you, and we have events lined up in the future. But it's crucial we receive your feedback to make these the most beneficial topics that you would like to receive. We will have a link provided at the end of the event requesting feedback, and we encourage everyone to provide feedback so we know how the webinar went for you today and also what future information you would like to receive. I have the honor and privilege to introduce you to our speaker for this session. Robert A. White joins us from Seattle, Washington as the Director of Community Impact for Minority Veterans of America, whose mission is to create belonging and advanced equity for minority veterans. Robert is a nationally recognized leader in the veteran community, experienced in strategic nonprofit development, public policies, and veteran initiatives, including serving as a Chief Executive Officer of Vetted Foundation, supporting high-performance transitioning veterans. Robert served over 20 years in the U.S. Army as both an enlisted engineer and a field artillery officer. He has dedicated his life to helping others and advocates for social and racial equity for underrepresented communities. So thank you, Robert, for joining us today. I'm going to switch over to your slide presentation and make sure that you are set up to be able to present. So I'm going to go ahead and go on mute for you, but you should be able to advance the slides.
Thank you so much, Christy. Good morning, everybody. Again, thank you, Christy and Every Mind, for this opportunity to share again this morning and the opportunity to connect with our community. As Christy said, my name is Robert White. I go by the pronouns, I use pronouns he, him, his, and I've been the Director of Community Impact for Minority Veterans of America about 10 months now. I've been part of the organization for a little over a year and a half. So before we begin our journey this morning, I just want to ensure that we provide a land acknowledgement and that we would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, to Amish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Amish tribe. Land knowledge is very important as it pays respect to indigenous peoples by recognizing where they came from and affirming who they are today. Land acknowledgement is an education. It enlists our speakers and our audiences to learn more about our region's indigenous history. So if we, like I said, if we get going this morning, here's your first tool. For everybody who's listening in and watching this presentation this morning, go ahead and pull out your phone. I know you probably already have it in your hand. It's, when you're doing these presentations, you understand that we always have a busy life out there. And I want you to go to your app store and search native land. And as you go in your app store, either the Apple or the Android store, you'll put in native land, and then you'll receive a quick little app there. And I want you to download and install that. And from the native land app, anytime you're doing a presentation or you're having a meeting at your organization or you're in a community, you can begin a land acknowledgement with the area you're in and begin showing the understanding and respect for the land that we currently stand on and whose shoulders came before us. So this morning, we will build a common language together to help understand. Apologize, let me go back one slide. To help understand how to engage minority and underrepresented veteran communities. I apologize, there's a little bit of a delay on my side, so when I see the slides, that's why we're a couple of slides ahead, so let's get this fixed and get back to where we belong. You have to love technology. And Chrissy, let me know when we get to the slide that says what we'll cover, if you don't mind, because I have it kind of jumping back and forth on my side.
We are there, so you're on it.
Perfect. All right, thank you so much. Again, I really apologize. There's about a 5-second delay. There it goes on my side with the slides changing. Again, like I said, this morning we'll cover is we're going to build that common language. This is important because we need to help understand how to engage minority and the underrepresented veteran communities. Next thing is trying to understand why minority and underrepresented veterans. I'll provide specific context and why we must improve our engagement in these communities. And lastly, reason why we're all here is to help provide you a few strategies to help you engage veterans more effectively. So I want to also share this. During this presentation, there may be concepts and language used to you that are unfamiliar with, and that's okay. This is about learning. And what I would ask is for everyone to lean in and become uncomfortable. At any moment you feel overwhelmed or need to step away from presentation, please more than welcome to. Please come back and watch it when you're more comfortable and when you are ready to do so. So we pose this question in our organization: what does a veteran look like? And I just want everybody to take a moment, close your eyes, or whatever's comfortable for you, and think about what a veteran actually looks like. And when that image comes to your mind, I want you to open your eyes and see if what matches on the screen is what you saw. So one of our projects with MVA is our veteran archetype. It's our second showcasing that veterans are all unique and come from different lived experiences. So this is Candace. She spent a summer photographing different communities throughout Ecuador last year. And I would ask, does she represent the image that's in your mind? If not, how come? This next veteran is Shiralis. She grew up in a foster system and was homeless for 6 months because she aged out. She then was able to join the Army as a mental health specialist and is now in graduate school to become a social worker. And lastly, here is Jose. He's studying interior design and architecture and wants to explore how it can help veterans heal. And I would again ask you to think about in your mind and what you saw, is this what a veteran looks like to you? So as we talked about building a common language, assumptions around common language understanding of the baseline can lead to the challenges and conflict that we have in this work. So before we before we dive into tools and strategies, it's important that we establish this common language and framework where we approach it from. And so how many of you have probably heard these words before? You've seen them, used them in your organizations, you've probably had friends or families use them, even your clients have used them. And the question I've always posed to people is, have you ever heard them used incorrectly? And how did it feel whenever you heard them used incorrectly? So as the screen shows, diversity is a condition of having composed of different elements. And our byproduct diversity of the work we do and who we are in this world differs from our backgrounds, our socioeconomic upbringing, the styles, our perspectives and beliefs, the competencies we all hold differently through education and through social interactions, and then our innovative community solutions that come from diversity and why diversity is so important. We'll dive a little more into it, but just to give that common language of a definition background, that's where we will start with. All right, so inclusion. I believe, let me know, Chrissy, if it's back to the inclusion screen. It looked like the screen decided I want to jump really fast ahead to the
I'm showing right now the equality versus equity screen.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thanks so much for that. I'm jumping back. So as I bring about inclusion, what is, do we care about inclusion? And as I share with diversity, this is where we count the people, and inclusion is where the people count. So inclusion is a composition of why the veteran community is changing. This is why it's important to understand inclusion. Minority and underrepresented veterans represent a community that is yet to find a home in our programs and the social construct of what we do in the nonprofit industry. Also increasing our inclusion capacity to ensure these communities continue to come back and actually use our programs. So again, I'll share that diversity is where we count people, what it looks like, who they are, but inclusion is where we continually make sure those people count and it matters out of our programs. So I believe we're still on the equality equity screen, and I know that many of you probably seen this graphic before with these three children. They're trying to watch the baseball game. All the boxes that are underneath them are supposed to represent what equity is and how they're supposed to overcome a barrier, which is that fence. And they're trying to achieve the goal of just watching the baseball game. But I'll preface it to you is that this graphic truly show what equity looks like versus equality. And the next graphic I'll show is one I do prefer, as I feel it accurately represents what equality and equity is and isn't. And let me know, Chris, if it jumps. It looks like the delay is happening again on my side.
I'm still on the slide with the baseball field.
Yeah, okay.
Now it's showing the bicycle.
All right, thank you. All right, so in the top box, it illustrates what equality is. As you'll see, each person there all receive the same exact resource, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of being tall, short, a child, someone who uses a wheelchair or accessible equipment. So equality always is the point of where the same resources are provided to everybody, regardless of their circumstances. Now, as you look at the bottom box, this is where equity happens. Equity delivers different resources to different people according to their varying needs. It recognizes that advantages and barriers exist, and as a result of that, we all didn't start from the same place. So here, equity recognizes that one person needs to use their arms to pedal, while the other people in this graphic need different sizes of a bicycle to properly ride it. So if I asked everyone to write down what their definition of what a minority is, we would have 100 different answers. And for this presentation, we're going to approach this definition of a minority from a racial framework. There we go. So as you can read on the screen, a relatively small group of people, especially one commonly discriminated against in a community, a society, or a nation, and it's different from others in ethnicity. As you can see, those are the majority of the populations that are considered a minority community. And as we talk about the difference with the underrepresented community, this is a subset of a population that holds a smaller percentage within a significant subgroup than the subset holds in the general population. A lot of words in there basically saying that within a smaller group of a community, there is another subset, another smaller group within that, and that is considered the underrepresented group. This can cross against all lines of socioeconomic, race, ethnicity, to include, gender, sexual expression, sexual orientation, disabled, enabled, ableisms, justice veterans, student veterans. But for our organization, we look at underrepresented and we think of this as the other identities that are not tied to the ethnic backgrounds of them. So the point here, like I said, is understand that veterans have and can have multiple intersectional identities. And just to share for me, my intersectional identities include being a minority of African, European, First Nation descent, but I present white. I was also a previous student veteran, and I'm also 100% disabled. So when we see veterans and we think of what they are, who they are, and look like, there's so many different complexities when it comes to our intersectional identities to take into account. So why focus on engaging minority and underrepresented veterans? Because together, we make up about 25% of the current population. Yet, for some reason, we still have the smallest voice. And why is that? You can see the graphics here show that 4.4 million veterans of color exist within our communities. Almost 2 million veterans are now women. That graphic or that population demographic is changing drastically in the landscape of our environment today. And then 1 million LGBTQ and about 2 million identify as non-religious veterans. So I just want to touch on the future demographics of veterans, because this is drastically changing by 2040. Even though we all understand that we have a declining veteran population, it's mostly white males. Women and minorities are projected to increase by 200,000 through 2045. And this is a very important reason, is because minority and underrepresented veterans have this unique and unaddressed needs. Historically, they have suffered injustices that impact their ability to access and willingness to engage with support programs. And we all have seen this firsthand. Policies like redlining and even the GI Bill have impacted veterans of color's ability to prosper and accumulate generational wealth. Just last year, the History Channel released a story that dived into how wide disparity in the GI Bill's implementation ended up helping drive growing gaps in wealth, education, and also civil rights between white and Black Americans. So many systems and programs are built on the understanding that all things are equal. What about your programs? What about your organization? What does that look like internally for you? So in order to better engage this minority populations as a community, we must understand and address the current inequities in our local communities and beyond. So about a month ago, I attended a lecture at the University of Washington, and Dr. Heather Evans spoke there. And I just want to share a little bit about that. And what I learned from there is without diversity, we don't know what needs to be fixed or even how to fix it. The communities we provide services know what they need, and many times they just lack the resources and even the access to them that is needed. So I always ask you the questions, always look internally and think about your organization through this presentation. So when you look at your organization, take a look and ask yourself, do you see diversity within your staff? How about your volunteers that show up? What about the diversity in the clients you serve? the community that you live in and represent daily? And how about those community partners that you work with? Do you work with diverse community partners, or are you working with the status quo of partners that have always been around, that have always done the work, and the needle is still not moving to the right? So Dr. Heather Evans prefaced this quote as saying, "We are independent of each other for our successes." And that holds so much weight. So I just want to call out that presence of racial diversity is not enough. Just because your organization has a diverse population of volunteers, of staff, of clients, that is not enough. There must be an integrated racial diversity to actually achieve inclusion. And I shared before, a couple slides back, that inclusion is where people count. Diversity, including your organization staff, your volunteers, your clients. This is what ensures your program development and engagement receives different perspectives and styles. So how better to engage? Now that I've been able to set that framework and what our why is, that's the next question. And I'm going to approach this from an internal engagement as well as an external engagement strategies for you. So your first internal engagement strategy to think of for your organization is its culture. This is the connective tissue of your organization. It pulls everything together, or it pushes it apart. How is your organization's culture? Do you have diversity statements and or a diversity strategy? This is your organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion for your employees and your clients, your customers, your community. It tells the community how diversity fits into your nonprofit's mission and values. And these are on paper that should be published all around your offices, also go out in your handouts and part of your intake process so that your clients and your community can see that firsthand and it's upfront and transparent. This past year, the nonprofit HR did a survey, and they show that 48% of organizations do not have a formal diversity statement. And I just want to make sure that we understand that a formal diversity statement is different from your equal employment opportunity statement. They are not the same. 69% of organizations do not even have a formal diversity strategy within their organization. And there's a couple of examples of files that have been attached to this. One of them is that you'll be able to use, and places I would recommend to go Google is look at the United Way, the Nonprofit Association of Oregon, and even the Council of Nonprofits website, as it will show you what a diversity statement strategy could look like and examples of it. So what are your organization's greatest diversity challenges? So I would say for many, and it's been proven through research over the last couple of years, it's realizing racial and ethnic diversity. And if that's the case for your organization, do you have a strategy to overcome this? The next thing I will look at within your organization's culture is your non-discrimination statements. These are governed by the laws of your state, of your community, and they govern these policies and requirements that you must follow. These are self-explanatory upfront and understandable, but not always used or even practiced a lot of times or even put up in the community workplace. And lastly, something that many organizations can use and start benefiting from is community agreements. Within the attachments, there is a copy of NBA's community agreement, something we previously presented to Student Veterans of America National Conference this past January in Los Angeles. So a community agreement provides a space, a brave space, a color brave space, a safe space, depending upon the community, depending upon if these are people of color, LGBTQ, all those terminologies matter. So whenever you put in the community agreement, those words matter because then it represents what community you're saying has a safe space here and who is welcome into that community. It's supposed to be a space for all to show up as they are and how they want to, not how our organization or the community want them to show up. So as I shared before, have these statements posted around your office. Make sure you share them with your clients. They should also be a part of your program packet. Last thing I will share around organizational culture is non-discrimination policies only advance equality within your organization. Community agreements are a step to begin advancing process and identity equity, and that is what we should all strive for. So intercultural competency is something recently I just went through for training and received the assessment and be a qualified administrator for. And it's phenomenal work that's happening here. And it's something I believe all nonprofits, all organizations, companies, universities should use. It's becoming more widespread across the United States as well as overseas. But many of you, if you've heard, that Harvard has an implicit association test, the IAT. This measures your attitudes and beliefs that people may be unwilling, aren't able to report. With our organization at MBA, a lot of our training around, especially our course called Why Race Matters, we have a pre-work where our students will take the Harvard IAT and we can look at the results around either gender or ethnicity or anything between sexual orientation, and what are your implicit biases that may not be known. So it's an amazing test that should be used in your organization and something that can be talked through within your professional development and your personal development of your staff and your volunteers. The next point on there on the screen is the Intercultural Development Inventory Assessment, IDI. This is what I recently become certified to be able to present and use as an assessment. So this has been identified as a mere cross-culturally valid assessment for building cultural competency. It looks at what the cultural competency of the individual is and how that person presents to the world and shows up in other different cultures and the acceptance or non-acceptance of it. So there's a lot of science behind it and a lot of testing that's happened. Over 500,000 people worldwide have taken this to also improve their intercultural competency. And what is great about this, at the end of the assessment, you receive a development plan that is designed to help the individual and your team to improve their competency. And one of the last internal areas I will talk to you about is program development. And as you can see here on the screen, that nice picture, that chicken scratch, that is actual true picture of myself and of our senior average associate we drew for our program when we were trying to design how do we bring people into the program, what is that first step, what is the entry points, what are the data we're collecting, and why does it matter, and then a line on there about what is equitable and what is equity and how do we capture that correctly. So honestly, I would say take an honest assessment of your organization's program or programs. A few questions to reflect on, and some right there on the screen for your programs, your organizational culture is, what is the population you seek to serve, and who do you currently serve? But more importantly is, are those two populations the same? And if they're not, why? And how can you overcome that? How can you move through those barriers? One question sometimes we forget to ask ourselves when we come to community is, who's missing? Who does not have a seat at the table? Who is predominantly not had a seat at the table? And how do we ensure that we bring them to the table or offer the opportunity for them to be there? So you need to look and see who's missing from your programs. You also need to take what measures have you taken to ensure their inclusion. And what I usually share with a lot of nonprofit organizations around program development is, show me your budget and I can show you your organization's priorities. Does your organization prioritize engagement through its funding, or does it prioritize operations or doing different events or other areas of the nonprofit versus engagement with the community and your clients, your customers. If you're not capturing how you're engaging and measuring your programs, you should begin to. I'll share a quick life lesson learned. I thought it was an anecdote just for MBA. Last year, as we started getting into more engagement with the community, we were using a platform called Eventbrite. Many people do. And we wanted to have these custom questions and ask for everybody's gender identity, gender expression, or ethnic background. And it was required questions for them to register. And what I noticed is less and less people are registering for our event. And I kind of started wondering why. I sat down with our outreach associates, had a team meeting around it, and started to think about what are the barriers we are already placing on our community to register for our own events. And what we decided is we had to look at what is the minimum information required for a participant to enter our program or potentially become part of the intake process. And what we identified is we only needed really two things: their zip code and their email address. So we changed our Eventbrite strategy and our engagement strategy to only have those two questions. Our engagement, our registrations increased dramatically over that next month. They doubled right away, and we have had nothing but better success in just asking very simple, the minimum amount of questions available to minimize barriers to engaging our programs. And then our follow-up allows us to do that intake and ask those more in-depth questions. So gender-neutral language. Are there signals that gender-diverse people aren't welcome in your organization? Gender documents and language are common. And one example would be the VA motto. It's really a great example. To care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan. In their motto, it is not gender neutral and does not represent the community who are veterans today. And that is why there's been a call to have this change. So I would ask you to look at your own policies internally and identify and remove any of these biases that are in them around gender neutral language. Many instances in our documents where gender is used, the same can be accomplished, like I said, with gender neutral language. Servicemen and women can become service members. Chairman can be a chairperson or just chair. And he or she can always be interchanged with they. I also then say with gender neutral language, look at your website. What are the visuals showing? What about your program brochures? How about how you speak on social media? Just check all your languages across all mediums, your website, your social media, your program brochures. And every time that you create a new document, make sure that you have a checklist of a question that you ask yourself. Do you use the proper pronouns for your staff, your volunteers, and your clients? And if you're not, now is the time to take the time to unpack and unlearn gender binary. Inclusive marketing kind of goes along in the same stream with the gender neutral language for your brochures and your flyers. Also think about whose face is on those brochures, your website. What are they actually wearing? Imagery should always reflect the community you want to serve. That's why diversity is so important. If you have a program brochure of all white people, but your community you service are people of color, what signal are you sending? If you work with people predominantly who are disenfranchised and want to step away from the military culture, what the uniform represents sometimes or what it looks like, are you pushing more of that imagery through your programs, in your brochure, showing people in uniform, or are you showing them back in the civilian world in the community where there's healing available? Social media is a very powerful set of tools available to you. So if you have someone who presents white and they're providing social media content, if you're trying to reach a predominantly African, Asian, or Hispanic community, ask yourself, would they have the intercultural competency to be effective in their role? If not, there are many other tools we just share, especially around like the Harvard IAT or the IDI assessment that can begin helping your organization move forward to ensure that we are having inclusive marketing and that the inclusion of these communities happen within our social media content. I'd also say don't be afraid to be the moderator yourself or find someone to be the moderator in those social media groups. That's something that we've had to do at MBA for all our community groups, is ensure that we have moderators from those different communities help to bring different perspectives and then have that diversity, which breeds that inclusion. It's your responsibility to hold space for all. And as the saying goes, veterans will be veterans. It's no different than saying boys will be boys. Lastly, it would say, look at who's writing your content. Where are you posting? And who are you tagging? What hashtags are you using? Who are you following? And honestly, lastly, look at who's following you. If the organization that you and the community you want to represent and the people who are following your social media are not that community that you want to represent, then there's a potential there to look at that and start to make changes for your organization and for your community. And on to the biggest piece when it comes to our external, the why for targeted outreach. Why do we do this? We conduct outreach because it increases access to programs. This is where we provide process equity for our veterans. This is where we learn how to be proximate to our community, how we build community partnerships, where we share data and surveys and don't sit in our silos. And we have community events that brings everyone together and shows that we can do this together. And I would share about being proximate is we have to meet veterans where they are and time and space, because that's what matters. Our situations change either rapidly or at a slow pace. But we always should be proximate where they are and meet them where they are. With the community partnerships, we can't do this alone. Like I talked about being siloed. There's over 40,000 nonprofits and local community centers across this nation that are doing amazing work. So why not build coalitions? Remember what Dr. Heather Evans talked about. Our success is independent on each other. With the data sharing surveys, I would recommend having agreements between organizations so that you can share that. Sometimes there's data that you may need or another organization has that isn't disaggregated, isn't broken down to the finest level. So if that's something that you need, then I would recommend to reach to those communities, reach to those partners, and begin that data sharing, begin learning how you can help each other improve and expand upon your own mission and your vision within your communities. And for workshops, hold and attend workshops, conferences. 10 workshops like this online. For MBA, we have our Emerging Leader Retreat. And our Emerging Leader Retreat last year, we brought in 25 women veterans across the U.S. And we spoke on classes like Why Race Matters. We provided professional development. We were also able to use grant money to house them. But having these conferences mattered because we were able to bring the community in. And then even though we have veterans from other parts of the United States, they got to learn and see what the Seattle, the King County veteran community look like, and then what is working for us and what isn't. So they're able to bring it back to their communities and expand upon that. But I was also make sure that when we do have these types of events you're holding, we need to be sure that we provide accommodations for their time and expertise. This can look like bus passes, food, childcare during the event, or something of just monetary value. So in closing, I do want to say that most of these strategies I've shared with you today, they're not new. And they've probably been used by many of you, your organizations in the past, and being prepared to use them in the future. maybe even currently you're doing them. But in this work, we all know that these are perishable skills and forgotten strategies that we must continually practice and implement. So I was talking with my partner a couple of months ago about this presentation and building upon this, and just thinking like, how do I continuously make sure that this work always stays at the forefront of my mind? And one practice I do is I always bump an email to the top of my inbox when I need to be reminded that, hey, I need to follow up with a community partner or a client, customer, or just friends and family. So then I started to think that this is a way that I also do my work in the community. Is I think about bumping this strategy, this email to the top of my box. It reminds me how important this work is every time. So as like I said in closing, I just want to remind that we all stand on the ancestral lands of where you are, and for myself, it's Duwamish Nation. And I always want to show the respect and saying until we meet again on their lands. Thank you so much for attending today. And I look forward to any questions that you have that come to us through this presentation and your feedback. Have a great morning or afternoon.
Thank you so much, Robert. And I'm going to switch it back over to our other slide deck. All right. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you so much again, Robert, for providing insight to engaging with minority and underrepresented veteran communities. As a reminder, we do need your feedback. We have provided a QR code for you to complete a feedback survey for this event. We'd ask that everyone that is attending to open up your mobile phone and select your camera option. As you hold your camera up to your computer screen over that QR code, a link will show or hover over it and a link will appear. Click on that link and it'll allow you to visit our SurveyMonkey feedback form. Please select the survey and fill that out. Provide us feedback on how this event was helpful to you today. And also it gives you the opportunity to provide us feedback on topics that you'd like to receive at future training events. So please provide us any information that you would like moving forward and topics that we can do throughout the rest of this year. And if you have any issues with the QR code, the SurveyMonkey link is provided on the slides. If you take a picture of that on your phone as well, you can always visit that link and provide us feedback. So thank you again, Robert, and thank you all again for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Kristen.